Okay. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm so excited for you to be joining us today. And as you are joining in, if you will pop your name in the chat or let me know where you're joining in from, that would be awesome. And just a little housekeeping too. If you are joining me from Facebook, real important that you give StreamYard and Facebook permission to speak to each other. You just need to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. Otherwise, if you leave us a comment, it's going to say Facebook user. So if you've already done that on your current device, no worries. You're good to go. So um, let's have some introductions. If I am new to you and you are new to me, my name is Beverly Smith. I am the former owner of a staffing and recruiting firm. So I know firsthand what hiring managers are looking for, and I'm using that knowledge to help mid, senior, and executive level professionals build their resumes, do their LinkedIn branding, help them with their job search and interview strategies so that they can land the career of their dreams. So, last week, if you tried to join us, my huge apologies. I had some technical difficulties on my end, and we had Bethany Wallace was scheduled to return. We were going to be talking about resolving workplace conflict with grace and ease and Christian values. And we have rescheduled that for Wednesday, September 18th. So just mark your calendars for Wednesday then. But 2 weeks ago, we had Dr. Sonia Green on the program, and it was a wonderful episode talking all about how we're let perfectionism hold us back and how it can really be negatively impacting your career. So it's a great episode. If you missed that, make sure that you go over to my YouTube channel at Beverly Smith Resumes. I've got it right there. And go back, and if you click on the live tab, you'll be able to catch all the replays on all of our episodes. So just go back and look for that one. This is actually Dr. Sonia's second time. She was back with us, I believe in April, where we talked about imposter syndrome, and they are very closely related, as you'll find out. So make sure that you go and check that out. But this week, I'm so excited to bring my friend Jennifer Murphy onto the program. We are going to be talking about practical strategies for leaders so that they can foster trust and connection within their team. So let me tell you a little bit about Jennifer before we get started. Jennifer Murphy is passionate about her family, her faith, and leadership. And after 20 years in corporate America, she has gone and launched her own business called Inspire and Transform Consulting. And she focuses on helping leaders develop knowledge, skills, and techniques needed to realize their potential and cultivate a team culture that values the gifts each person possesses. Jennifer's strengths are in coaching people where they are, understanding their needs or their desires, recognizing people's potential, development planning, and creative problem solving. She enjoys teaching practical approaches that make people feel valued and heard, rejuvenates customer service organizations, improves work processes, and develops high-performing teams who produce consistent and strong business results. Jennifer holds a Master's of Business Administration degree from Augusta State University and a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish. Hola, Jennifer. From Augusta College. She and her family are based in Augusta, Georgia area. So Jennifer, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in. I want to jump into this and get right into it. So talk to me about why building trust and connection on your team is just so critical for business success.
Absolutely. Well, you think about how much time leaders spend with their teams, right? When we're working, the majority of our day is spent with the people we work with. And so it's so important that teams, that employees have trust with their leader. And, you think about it, trust is the foundation to any relationship, whether that's professional or personal. Trust gives you the confidence that your leader values you and cares about you as a person more than the work you produce. Trust is knowing that your leader is there for you and that they're supporting and guiding you. Trust is also having the belief that your leader values you as a person, but also your gifts and the contributions you make, and that you are going to be intentional and invested in their future because you care about them. And so, every leader and team member wants to feel seen, they want to feel valued, and they want to feel heard. And so a leader's, the way they demonstrate through intentionality and their availability and integrity, and most importantly, their consistency in all of those things, this is what's going to help cultivate trust. And when team members feel they can trust their leader, they're going to work harder for you. They're going to stick with you in the tough times, right? Because the changes are always coming. You're going to experience, tough moments in work. But when your team believes in you and that you trust them as well as them trusting you, they're going to stay with you. They're going to build that loyalty. You're going to see that team unity really start to pull together. And this is what's going to manifest into your team members raising their hand. Hey, how can I help? What can I do to support you? They're going to be bringing the ideas for innovation, and this engaged culture, which again is based on trust, right? This is where you're going to see the high performance, and this is where you're going to see the strong business results. But even more important than that, as a leader, you are influencing a positive impact in the people that you're surrounding yourself with in your team. So that, to me, it has such far-reaching results. You think about your employee retention, your customer retention, your bottom line results, like all of those factors, they generate themselves in one form or another based on the trust that a leader cultivates within their team.
Absolutely. And I think when they trust you, they're going to buy in to the things that you're trying to implement, the different strategies. And when they don't trust you, they're not sure, you're going to get those that are just like, yeah, I don't know. You always, when you try to roll out something new, they're like, just not going to budge on that. And it's hard when you go through those changes. I mean, even for the leader, if you're changing software or you're changing strategies, any of that can be such a challenge. It's going to be a whole lot easier if they trust you, right?
Absolutely. Well, you think about it, leaders have such a big scope of responsibility, but one of their most important qualities is their ability to influence others, right? So again, if your team trusts you as a leader and believes that you have their best interests in mind, they're going to buckle up with you, right? And they're going to follow you and support you in whatever endeavor that you have for them. And that's really important as you're trying to move forward to meet a mission or a vision in your company.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about some common challenges that leaders experience in building that connection. And also, what role will emotional intelligence play in overcoming these hurdles?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest challenges leaders face today when it comes to, just spending time with their team and really, because I think, connection is the first step to building trust, right? So you've got to spend time with your people to cultivate that. And I think leaders really are challenged with how to do that well with the increase in their workload, right? I think the scope of responsibilities that leaders face, they just get bigger and bigger. The span of control continues to get bigger. I remember when I was early in my career, my team was maybe 5 to 10 people. In the latter part of my career, it was upwards of 15 to even 20 at times. And you would see that even for frontline leaders. So obviously that's not the norm, but the reality is spans of control are growing. So that also adds some complexity into a leader being able to find time or see that they have availability and capacity to spend with their people. I think also messaging can be a challenge for leaders sometimes, particularly when you think about leaders who are, in the early stages of their leadership journey. They're trying to figure out how, what can I share and what can I not share, right? When you think about transparency, which is so critical for leaders and building trust with your team. They're also trying to figure out, like, how do I hold my team accountable while I'm still trying to, build a relationship with them. They're learning how important feedback is and the consistency of that, because feedback is it's a clear vehicle, right, to cultivate trust with your team. And I think the last challenge I would say, sometimes leaders feel that pressure of just performing, right, and hitting those metric goals, that sometimes they're so focused on the tactical day-to-day that they're not seeing the value they can gain by spending time with their people, just observing them, or just taking time away to find out how things are going and what can they do differently to lean in and support them. All of those efforts, that leaning in and offering to help, those are activities that really promote trust. But sometimes I think leaders, with just the increased work, the calendar that's full of meetings back to back, they find it really difficult to find time to be with their people and to build those relationships. But I do think emotional intelligence plays a big part in that. And, emotional intelligence in itself is a really big topic. You could probably have a whole session just on that. But I think there are a lot of, practical steps that leaders can take with that in mind to help cultivate trust. So one of the first aspects that I think is pretty critical is empathy, right? So I think, as a leader, your team, when they do trust you, they're going to come to you about a lot of different things. It can be work related, it might not be work related. And they want to know that you have a listening ear. You don't have to have all the answers. Nobody expects you to have all the answers as a leader. But I think your team is looking to you to be that sounding board and to offer support with what you can do, right? And so when you think about empathy, a leader, and you're spending time with them, it's about paying attention to your people, right? Looking at their body language. What's their attitude like lately? Are they responsive? Do you see kind of blips in their performance? Like, all of these are clues that something may be going on. It could be good or bad, right? Like, you could see a team member and they could be really excited and you're like, hey, what's going on today? What's got you so, energized, right? So empathy, it's recognizing those, the feelings and the experiences your team member might be going through. I want to share just a quick story. Years ago, I had a team member she was just like the light of the team. She had a really bright personality. She was always engaging with everybody in the team. And I remember one day she was kind of keeping to herself at her desk, and she really wasn't talking to, her teammates. And I walked over to her and I asked her, I'm like, hey, what's going on today? You don't seem like yourself. And I'll never forget, she said to me, how is it that you always know when something's wrong? And of course, I just, I smiled and I'm just like, well, what can I do to support you, right? Because for me, what I took from that was she knew that I cared enough to see her, right? I never knew what the situation was. I don't need to know, as a leader, you don't need to know all the particulars, but what I saw and what she conveyed is that, hey, I could use some support today. And so I offered her, hey, instead of doing this today, do you want to focus on that? Because sometimes we do need to just distract ourselves with other things to keep us going, right?
Right.
So that's one aspect for sure. I would say something else, when you think about emotional intelligence, is really being self-aware as a leader. So as a leader, are you comfortable giving feedback? I know this was something even from myself, growing through my leadership journey. It took me time to really learn how to say certain things, particularly if I had to give feedback that wasn't so positive, right? And some leaders just shy away from it, right? They don't feel comfortable, right? So they just don't address it, right? And so then that comes into that kind of, when you think about integrity, right? That accountability, like, are you going to hold your people accountable to whatever expectation you've set, right? So knowing, like, okay, hey, am I comfortable in this? Do I struggle? Do I need to get support to help me figure out how to maneuver through this? But on the flip side of that, are you comfortable receiving feedback, right? I think one of the things that leaders, sometimes we forget to ask, what can we do differently, right? We seeking feedback from our team members. So that's another aspect. And then I would say just a couple other things, from a communication standpoint, are you transparent? Do you respect confidentiality? Like, if your team member is coming to you with information, are you treating that with care and respect, or are you out there on the floor talking about it with somebody else? Now, hopefully as a leader, you would not do that. But sometimes leaders can be, they may be they may be a little freer with sharing information maybe than their employee would want them to, right? So being mindful of that, and just persevering through change. Like, do you persevere through change? Do you take ownership when you make mistakes? Right? I mean, I think the key is that from a leadership perspective, your team is watching you. They're looking at you to lead by example. Like, there's a lot of truth in that statement. And so I think when you think about trust from an emotional perspective, emotional intelligence perspective, if they see you making a mistake and owning that and saying, you know what, hey, I should have done this differently, or maybe I didn't handle that situation as well as I could, I'm sorry. Like, that goes a long way to building trust, because you're showing your team member you're relatable, and that if they make a mistake, it's going to be okay, right? You're going to give them grace when they make a mistake. And those things, while they may seem very small, they do have really big dividends in the long run, because again, your team is watching you and looking to you to lead and how to respond to different situations.
Absolutely. That vulnerability, just being willing there, that's definitely a great way just to kind of say, I'm not any different than you guys. I just might be in this leadership role, but I'm still human too, and owning up. I think it's a huge step in building trust. So I want to move on into something that I think a lot of people are finding very challenging right now, and ever since 2020, as you see more and more places being open to remote or a hybrid model with their workforce. How do we build relationships and develop that engagement? I can think of, like, I had a conversation with a gentleman a few months ago who he was having to really work at that because he tends to be head down. And he told me, he's like, Beverly, he goes, I know if I was in the office with these folks, we'd be having those water cooler moments. But because I'm not, I would just as soon work and get my stuff done. But I know I'm afraid they think I'm not very engaging. So let's address that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can say for many years I've had team members that were in other locations. So this has been certainly a big part of the career I had in corporate before starting my own business. And so I think the biggest thing I can say is, at first, is be consistent in connecting with them every single week. Right. So I think leaders, a lot of times we may have one-on-ones with our team members like every other week or maybe once a month. But when you have team members that are remote, it's super critical to have a connection point every single week. Right. And do that, have that call on video. And I know not everybody likes video, but the reality is that's kind of the world we live in now, and everybody is going on video. And there's such value in going on video when you're talking to your team member, because it gives you a chance to see their body language. They can see yours. They can see, hey, I am paying attention. I'm not multitasking. I'm listening to you. I care about what you have to say. Let's work through whatever together. There's tremendous value in seeing somebody, and being able to talk with them. So that would be the first thing I would say. Make sure you have a weekly connection point. It can be for 30 minutes, right? And then with your other team members who are in the office with you, maybe you meet with them every other week for a little bit longer, right? But again, you're staying connected to the folks you can't see and have that water cooler conversation with on a regular basis. I would say something else that is super important is to make sure you're talking to them every single day. Now, it can be through a chat, right? I mean, every company that I know of has some kind of chat system, and you're able to say, just pop them up and say, hey, good morning. How was your evening? Maybe check in later today. Hey, how's it going? Do you need support? And then be available to them. Like, if they reach out to you and say, hey, I'm dealing with a situation, can you get on a call with me? Like, jump on a call, do again, video call. So you're talking with them and because then it feels like you are seeing each other, right? That you do have that connection. I would say something else that's real important is when you do have your team meetings, even everybody's on video. And in one of my last corporate roles, I had multiple leaders that reported to me from different locations. And we made it, we met every other week as a team. We were always on video. I looked for opportunities to partner leaders that were not in the same location to work on projects together, to be each other's backups. And those type of connections, again, being able to see each other and talk to each other, it really fostered not only a lot of trust and connection with me and my leaders who were in different locations, but it also really built the team culture. And they were, everybody really felt like, hey, we're in this together, which I think is so important for team members who are not in the same office, right? I think sometimes, particularly if they're remote and they're working from home even, they don't have the opportunity to even engage with other people. So I think the more you can have regular connection points, being on video, looking for ways to bring the whole team together on video and partnering together, those are some very simple ways to help kind of build that relationship with your remote employees.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And just that little bit of time can go a long ways. Just spending some time with them, I mean, I'm sure you probably feel like, well, we don't want to meet just to have a meeting, but at the same time, even just knowing, hey, we're gonna have a chat once a week, and this is your time to bring anything to me. And if we find we don't have anything, we'll sign off and get on with our day. But if you've got something you need some help with, I'm here for it. So
exactly. Well, I think it kind of goes back to the availability piece, right? I had a leader once. They just walked by my office one day and they said, thank you for just being available, right? Just being, if I need time with you, you're available. If you're busy, you'll make time. Like that availability piece, to your point, right? If you get on a call and you realize, hey, we don't really have a lot going on today, I could use this time back to work and get other things done. You let your team member lead that, right? You let them be the one to say, I don't need you today. The fact that you've made yourself available, it goes such a long way, because again, you're demonstrating to your team member, I care about you. I'm here to support you. You can count on me. And that is super critical in building trust.
It's the open door policy, except for it's open video, open
Exactly.
Oh, well, let's also talk about some practical approaches that leaders can take to foster that connection and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are kind of 5 kind of key areas that I would just recommend that leaders incorporate. And these are very simple things to do. Like some of them, people may say, well, wow, that really makes a difference, but I'm telling you, it does. So the first thing I would say is be visible to your team every day. Now, the one thing I'll preface before I go further, these recommendations, it's all about being consistent. It doesn't mean you have to I have to do these exact things every single day, all the time, because the reality as leaders, that's not real life, right? You're going to have days where you don't get to be visible to your team because you're stuck behind closed doors in meetings all day. That is just life sometimes for a leader. But the more consistent you are in the things that I'm going to share with you, this is what builds that confidence that team member has in you as a leader. They'll give you grace too, right? So the first thing, again, be visible. So it's as simple as saying good morning to your team every single day. Now, again, it can be through a chat. It can be in person. Sometimes I would always get to the office pretty early. So I had a core group of my team that was already in the office, and I would walk the floor and say good morning. But once probably 8:30 came around, I was probably in my first call. So I might not get to some of my other team members until a little bit later in the morning, right? But even just popping up in a chat and say, hey, good morning, team. How's it going? How was your evening? If there's something going on in that team member's life, like maybe their child just had a big sporting event over the weekend, asking them, hey, how did it go? Just that 5 minutes in the morning can make such a difference in that connection. Again, connection is the first step to building trust. So it's a very simple activity that you can do, whether your person is in front of you or if they're remote. Just popping them up and then checking with them later in the day and saying, hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can do to support you? Again, it could be at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be right after lunch, but again, that consistency of checking in and saying hello, how's it going? That goes a long way to showing, again, your team that you're interested in them and what they have going on. And there's one story I want to share just really briefly. I had a leader years ago who was new to our organization. She was a wonderful addition. She brought so much great experience, and she really was a joy to be around. But when she got her first engagement survey results, they weren't as good as she had hoped they would be. And she was pretty disappointed. And so we sat down and we talked about it. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me about your typical day. And she said, well, I come into the office, I put my things down, and I run to my first meeting. And I'm like, okay. And I knew her team because we were all in the same office. I'm like, well, a lot of your team members get there early. So why don't you stop and say hello, good morning, before you actually start your first meeting? And so, and I said, look, just start building conversation with them about the things that you know you have in common, right? So she started to do that. And over time, I noticed that her team members would stop coming to me as much as they had been previously. And by the time the next survey results came around, they were so much better. Again, cultivating that time with them in the morning, showing their, your team that you're interested in them goes a long way. So be visible is the first thing. The second step is have recurring one-on-ones and team meetings on the calendar, right? Have that scheduled meeting so that it's out there. You don't have to remember to send the invite. It's recurring. Do it for the full year. Do it forever, like whatever you need to do. You can adjust your timing later if they move on to something else. But it's so important to have that on the calendar because your team members look forward to having time with you. I know I always did. I always look forward to my meeting with my team, meeting with my leader. So, don't underestimate that value of that one-on-one time. Your team member wants to hear from you. They want to know, how am I doing? Am I hitting the mark? Am I meeting the expectations? What can I do to grow and develop, right? That time is really precious in a one-on-one. And also with your team, this is an opportunity to kind of talk as a group. Hey, how are we doing as a team? Let's celebrate these milestones. Let's recognize somebody for best practices. Let's partner together and brainstorm on how we solve, a particular challenge. Maybe we're not hitting the mark on our team goals. Like, what do we need to do? What's happening? And let your team have that opportunity to share, right? Which kind of goes into my third point, which is ask for feedback, right? You want to create a space and a platform, just like you do in a one-on-one. You want to create a space where you're asking your people for feedback. So that can come in a team meeting about, okay, what's working well, what's not, how do we overcome this together? Your employees will value the fact that you care about what they have to say. And I can certainly say, as a leader of teams for many years, your team members at the front line, they know how to solve a lot of the problems that you're facing as a company. So give them the space and the opportunity to share that. And again, that's going to cultivate trust because you're interested and you value what they have to say. The fourth point I would say is be available. We talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. Just making sure that, if they reach out to you and say, hey, do you have a few minutes? You may not have time in that moment, right? But find time later that day, right? And because most of the time your team members only need 10 or 15 minutes. They may just need to run a situation by you for your input. They may just need a sounding board. They may just need to vent. Maybe they're having a really tough day and they just need somebody to talk to. As a leader, you want your people coming to you so that you know what's going on. And again, your availability goes so far because not every leader does make themselves available. And so when you do, you stand out as someone who really cares about their people. And then the fifth thing I would say is just make sure you do what you say you're going to do, right? So if you have told your team member, hey, let me reach out to that fellow team to get the information you need so you can respond to our customer, you need to do that. And then you need to follow up with them and let them know that you've done that. Because, so many times I've had employees come to me and say, hey, my leader says they're going to go do X, Y, Z for me, but then I never hear anything more about it. So from an employee's perspective, they're wondering, did they even do it? Is there something I need to do? Right? So it's very simple, but just follow back up with them and say, hey, I talked to so-and-so. Here's the next step. Just do what you say you're going to do. It goes such a long way with your team members. So I know I ran through this pretty quickly, but those are really 5 very practical, easy things leaders can do that don't take a lot of time, but will demonstrate to your team that, hey, I've got you, I'm here for you, and I'm interested in you as a person.
Those are great. I took up 3 pages of notes. It's so good. I I love goodness all of them, but the asking for feedback, I think, you know, that value, that giving them, allowing them a voice,
Yes,
and it really fosters a lot of good collaboration because sometimes, like you said,
yes,
they already know what to do, or they might have
mhm,
better ideas than you've even thought of. And
absolutely,
if you don't ask for their feedback, you could be missing out, or it could be a training opportunity as well.
absolutely. Yes,
And
100%. You know,
yeah.
years ago, I spent a lot of my early career in the manufacturing world, and one of the things that was super critical for us was going to where the work was. Right, whether you're in the manufacturing floor or you're in a customer service team
Mhm.
like I was, going to where the work happens, and the work happens with your team, your frontline associates.
Mhm.
They're so close to the work. They're so close to your customers. They're going to know things that you don't. They're going to be like,
Mhm.
if we did this one thing differently, it would make the process so much more efficient. That's what you want to
Absolutely.
hear, right? Because
Mhm.
again, kind of going back to my earlier comment, the workload has not slowed down. If anything, it's sped up and the pace of work is faster. So you want your team to come with opportunities to make the work more efficient, to make it more valuable and meaningful and not wasted, right?
Mhm.
So giving them the opportunity to share their ideas, it just shows to them that you're interested in what they have to say. And again, this is what prompts that innovation. This is what prompts, finding ways as a team to be united together. And as a leader, you don't have to go do all the work, right? You bring your team along with you and help let them take the lead. Again, you're developing your people, you're delegating opportunities, you're creating capacity in your work. This is what, those simple actions, they generate those type of results on top of building connection and trust with your team.
So good. So good. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I'm going to put your LinkedIn in the chat. But is there anywhere else that people can go to connect with you, or is LinkedIn the best place?
So LinkedIn's probably the best place. You'll find me under my name, Jennifer Murphy. I'm probably most consistently present on LinkedIn with my posts and just content. But you can also go to my website at inspireandtransform.com. But I also send a weekly email blog, so I'll just share that as well. If anybody's interested in receiving more tips or opportunities to learn more leadership, best practices, you can DM me in LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share that with you as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. Whether we've covered a lot of ground today, and
Yes.
if you're still hanging with us, put your biggest takeaway in the chat. Would love to hear your feedback on there. So far, I don't see any comments. I did put something that stuck out to me. I put connection is the first step to building trust. I love that so much, and pop over here to LinkedIn. I don't see anything on the comments over there as well. But y'all, if you're catching this on the replay, you can always use hashtag replay. And if you'll tag me, I will make sure that if you ask a question, that Jennifer and I get back to you as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Um, so, just as a reminder, I do serve mid and senior level professionals. I know that if you're searching for your next job, it can feel overwhelming. So, don't go at it alone. My team and I are here to help you craft a custom resume and can guide you through the job search process and interview strategies, and would love to help you. And you can do that by, let me put my link to my calendar in the chat. And I'll add that here on the banner. So, otherwise, next week we've got Mr. Rudy Ortiz joining us. He's going to be talking about why it's important that your team understands the company's mission and vision, and how to make sure that that's done in a appropriate manner. So you want to join us Wednesday at 12:30 Central, and I will plan on seeing you guys all then. So have a great Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Beverly.